I'm Aaron Porras, and thanks for joining us from our studios in Israel. Coming up in today's newscast, Israel commemorates the fallen soldiers of the 1967 Six-Day War. The IDF simulates a war against Hezbollah, and tensions are heating up between Pink Floyd's frontman Roger Waters and the band Radiohead. Stay tuned for the latest news in Israel. It's the 50th anniversary of the Six-Day War, at least according to the Gregorian calendar. And yesterday, Israel held a memorial ceremony for the approximately 1,000 soldiers who died during the war. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu spoke at the IDF Museum in Latrun, saying that the sacrifices made by the soldiers were invaluable to Israel.
אתם הנחתתם אגרוף מחץ על תוקפנו וסיכלתם את המזימה לחנוק את צווארנו. מלחמת המגן המופלאה שידענו, מלחמה שאין צודקת ומוסרית ממנה, הנחילה לנו שפע של הישגים. היא הוכיחה לאויבינו שאיננו עם של חולות נודדים. צריך להבין מה חשבו עד אז על מדינת ישראל. חשבו זה רק עניין של לחתוך אותה במותניים הצרות שלה, ובזה ייגמר הסיפור. ואתם הוכחתם ששורשינו נטועים כאן לנצח. המלחמה הזאת הוציאו אותנו מן הגטו הצר לאורך החוף, שעליו איימו בקביעות כוחות עוינים. מאז יש לנו גבולות בני ההגנה ויכולת להדוף התקפות נגדנו.
Now, if you ask President Reuven Rivlin or Prime Minister Netanyahu, Israelis should look at the war, which Israel fought without United States support, as a lesson in self-reliance.
50 שנה עברו מאז מלחמת ששת הימים. בעוד שעל צדקתה של המלחמה אין מי שיערער, הרי שתוצאותיה ומשמעותיה הביאו לדיון ציבורי ער בחברה הישראלית. היא הציבה בפנינו אתגרים שאנו מתמודדים איתם גם היום. מדינת ישראל שינתה את פניה. החברה הישראלית שינתה את פניה. כן, גם הצבא שינה את פניו, דבר אחד לא השתנה. חובתנו להגן על עצמנו בעצמנו.
המלחמה השיבה אותנו למחוזות מולדתנו, לנחלת אבות, שבלב ליבה ירושלים השלמה. ומעל הכל, מלחמת ששת הימים לימדה אותנו לקח תמידי, שהוא אבן הראשה. ישראל תגן על עצמה בכוחות עצמה מול כל אויב, וגם מול ריכוז של אויבים.
At the Latrun memorial ceremony yesterday, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu also pledged that Israel will always retain security control over the border with Jordan. Netanyahu is saying that Israel seeks a real peace that will last for generations with its neighbors. For that reason, he says Israel will retain security control over the territory west of the Jordan Valley. Previous proposals for an agreement between Israel and the Palestinians have called for Israel to cede administration of the Jordan Valley to some sort of international peacekeeping force. But Netanyahu's words, as well as his pledge that Israel will defend itself by its own, suggests that this is off the table for him, at least for now. Israel's withdrawal from the Sinai Peninsula, for example, in 1956, was conditional on U.S. pledges to keep the Straits of Tiran open to Israeli ships, a pledge the United States did not keep. There are rumors that U.S. President Donald Trump wants Israel to cede parts of the northern West Bank to the Palestinian Authority while retaining security control. Reportedly, Netanyahu is against this concession as well. Now, in other news, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's trip to the West Africa is shaping up to be a great success, but he's adamant in saying that he expects United Nations support from African countries which receive Israeli economic assistance.
Today we seek to share our experience with the governments and peoples of Africa. ECOWAS' mission is to increase peace and prosperity by harnessing Africa's vast resources. I came to Africa last year, to East Africa. I saw these resources firsthand. I saw diversity and richness. I saw passion and productivity. I saw young African entrepreneurs who are building companies harnessing the power of the digital age. Africans are seizing the future. Israel wants to seize this future with you. You truly have no better partner for this mission than Israel.
On Sunday, the Prime Minister went to the Liberian capital of Monrovia, where he met with the leaders of Liberia, the Gambia, and Senegal, as well as the President of the Economic Community of West African States. Netanyahu is offering to send Israeli assistance to these impoverished countries, but he's emphasizing that he expects support in return at the United Nations. Israel and Senegal have resumed full diplomatic relations following Netanyahu's meeting with Senegalese President Macky Sall at the Economic Summit. This winter, Israel downgraded ties with Senegal, though, after the country sponsored a UN Security Council resolution that denied Jewish rights to Jerusalem. The resolution, which passed during former President Barack Obama's lame duck period following the election of Donald Trump, was not vetoed by the United States. Netanyahu also met covertly with the president of a Muslim-majority Mali, a country which does not have diplomatic relations with Israel. The Prime Minister has tweeted a photo of his meeting-packed schedule on Sunday, sarcastically referring to it as diplomatic isolation. Joining me now to elaborate on Prime Minister Netanyahu's visit to the African Economic Summit is the head of African Studies at Tel Aviv University, Dr. Sgt Becque. Thank you so much for coming in today.
Thank you.
All right, so my first question is, Netanyahu made it clear that he wants support at the United Nations, but what do these African countries want from Israel?
It's not all, it's some of these countries of ECOWAS member. ECOWAS is a very important regional organization in Africa, in the western part of Africa. And some of the countries want to strengthen a relation with Israel from various reasons, economic, political. Some want help in the war against terror. There is a lot of motives for this cooperation, but some of the countries of this organization are reserved regarding Israel, and some even don't have diplomatic relation with Israel. So it's complicated. It's not that all the countries in ECOWAS are friendly to Israel.
Sure. So then do you think that this has a good chance of working? Do you think maybe we'll open up some diplomatic ties with countries we did not previously have ties with? Do you think that we will be able to keep up with any such demands that these countries have of us?
Yeah, I think it's very important to strengthen all the diplomatic ties with all African states, both countries that we have relation with and countries that we don't have relation with. I think it's very, very important, but it has to be part of a long-term plan to come back to Africa. We used to be very, very close to all the African countries, and we got distance during history. But I think now it's time that we have to come back. It's a very important continent, both politically, economically, and other. We are neighbors, we are not even
right
Europe. We are closed very. So I think it's very important, both in the eastern part and in the western part, and then in the southern part. I think it's the first step, but it's an important step. But it should be one step of a long distance plan.
Sure. So, okay, now Senegal voted against Israel back in December over Resolution 2334. Do you think that we've just heard that at ECOWAS we're rewarming our ties with Senegal, but do you think that the relationship will ever be the same as it was? Do you think Senegal is maybe taking Israel a little bit more seriously now? What are your takes on that?
I think Senegal is another important state in the western part of Africa. It's Islamic state. Most of its citizens are Muslims, yet she holds some kind of very moderate kind of Islam. It's mostly Sufi Islam, and I think it's very important that we have closer tie with Senegal, and I think it's possible to rewarm the relation again with this country.
Okay, I hope so as well. I mean, we want, as you said, we want diplomatic ties with everybody. But what are the greatest costs and benefits? Let's take like pro and con to dealing with some of these countries. Again, having diplomatic relations with any country probably can be seen as a pro. But there's this double-edged sword. Will we actually get what we want out of them at the United Nations? Will it be enough? Will it matter?
I see only the pros because I think if you look just in the economic, from economical point of view, we have great potential of collaborate in many economic fields, like a cellular phone, for example, or all kind of economic field. And the trade between Israel and Africa, it's completely very restricted now to, it don't have a full potential. I think now it's time to think about a way to strengthen economic and ties with all of these African states. And I think there is a new leadership in many African states that is more democratic, more aware of their right of its citizens and want to develop the country. So we have a chance, to contribute our knowledge to these countries.
All right. Well, I hope that everything works out. I hope you're right. Only pros. Only pros from here on out. Dr. La Becque, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you very much.
All right. Now, minutes after a Palestinian terrorist stabbed an IDF soldier and was subdued, IDF Sergeant Ayals shot him dead. And for some, his actions were criminal. For others, they were justified. Now, it seems that the courts are just as confused when issuing their sentence. Ayals was convicted of manslaughter and sentenced to 18 months in prison after he was caught on camera shooting a disarmed and injured Palestinian attacker. His attorneys are arguing that the military is arbitrarily applying the law, having not tried other IDF soldiers for similar crimes which got less publicity. The military prosecutors are arguing that his year-and-a-half-long sentence doesn't fit the severity of his crime. Both the defense and prosecution have filed appeals, and the military appellate court push for out-of-court mediation has ended in failure. The army says the gaps between the sides are too significant and substantial to allow an agreement. Ayals has spent over a year confined in his base, and the time he's spent there will not count to his sentence. His military service will end on July 20th, and it's unclear where or if he would remain under arrest if a verdict is not reached before then. According to police spokespeople, an Arab-Israeli citizen was shot and killed last night as a security guard opened fire into a crowd of protesters who were attacking a police station. Hundreds of protesters, many wearing masks, were said to be storming the station, burning police vehicles, and throwing rocks. Police spokesman Mickey Rosenfeld reports that officers in the Arab-Israeli town of Kafr Qasim attempted to apprehend a suspect for questioning when the violence broke out. It began with 50 local residents who began throwing rocks and then escalated into hundreds breaking through the gates of the local police station and attempting to storm the building. The security guard who felt his life was in danger opened fire, and the protester who was shot was critically wounded and died in the hospital. For most of the world, Saudi Arabia's initiative to essentially kick Qatar out of the Sunni Muslim world was sudden, but the director of Israel's Ministry of Intelligence is not surprised. According to Chagai Tzuriel, Qatar is a complete pain in the behind to the mainstream Sunni Arab camp. Its support for the Muslim Brotherhood and political Islam is destabilizing for the remaining Arab nationalist regimes, like Egypt, and its ties with Iran are unacceptable to Saudi Arabia. Tzuriel says that the Saudis have made attempts to reconcile with Qatar, but now the Saudis are adopting a policy of strategic impatience to pressure Qatar to end its double game. Qatar hosts the United States Central Command Forward Headquarters, home to some 2,000 United States troops and a large part of its air force strength. But it also supports Shia jihadist groups in Yemen and the Hamas terrorist group in the Gaza Strip. On Monday, Saudi Arabia, Egypt, the UAE, and Bahrain all cut ties with Qatar, expelling Qatari citizens from their territories, removing Qatari ships from their ports, and even banning Qatar airline flights from flying over their territories. The Maldives, Libya, and Yemen have followed in their example. One of the most vocally pro-Israel officials in President Trump's administration is set to visit Israel this week, and just like the president, Nikki Haley will be making a personal stop at the Western Wall. Haley will arrive at Ben Gurion Airport Wednesday morning, and over the course of her 3-day trip, she will meet with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, President Reuven Rivlin, and with senior Palestinian diplomats. Israeli United Nations Ambassador Dani Danon says that Israel is happy to host a true friend of Israel. Haley has been standing with Israel for many years now, and especially since she arrived at the UN. Haley's excursion to various sites at the Old City of Jerusalem is a private one, and no Israeli officials will go with her. Trump's visit was also private. It's thought that an official visit would constitute U.S. recognition of Israeli sovereignty over the Old City. That being said, Haley did say that she believes the Western Wall is part of Israel, although she is unsure what the administration's policy is. A high-ranking Palestinian official has just announced that anyone caught breaking the daily Ramadan fast in public may face up to a month in prison. ILTV's Max Keisler has more on the story. Max?
Well, this isn't a new law by any means. It's been on the books since the 1960s, but it still seems almost draconian to send people to jail for this.
Yeah, draconian definitely seems to fit into the definition here. So anyway, let's take a look at your report.
The official Palestinian Authority news agency says that security officials have been ordered to act against those eating in public to preserve the month's sanctity. While officials are claiming that the ruling dates back to a Jordanian statute from the 1960s, many are taking to social media to criticize the ruling. The Palestinian Declaration of Independence claims that the future state would respect freedom of religion. The 50,000 Christians of the Palestinian-controlled parts of the West Bank who are being coerced into publicly observing Ramadan may be skeptical about that. Most Arab states have laws against breaking the Ramadan fast too early, and people generally do so from the safety of their homes rather than in public.
The IDF is now holding a surprise drill in northern Israel, simulating the outbreak of a full-scale war with Hezbollah. The two-day exercise began on Sunday with the amassing of troops from the Golani Brigade, the Commando Brigade, and other special forces, as well as troops from the IDF's Northern Command. The soldiers were transported in planes and helicopters, and a senior IDF officer says that the goal of the exercise was to practice switching quickly from routine situations to war scenarios. The officer is not disclosing what situation in the simulation caused the outbreak of war, but it does involve Hezbollah carrying out a terror attack against IDF troops. IDF Chief of Staff Gadi Eisenkot visited Northern Command while the exercise was happening, and he told IDF officers that the only way to prevent war is to ensure your preparedness. The senior officer is stressing that there is no immediate threat to Israel from Lebanon, and this was only a scheduled exercise. Now, we live in a very technological and digital age, and while there are innumerable and obvious benefits to living in the world as a mobile supercomputer, there are an equal number of possible risks. So how can we be sure that we're using our mobile technology safely? Well, here with me in the studio to tell us more about his solution to this question is Yuval Rapoport, the CEO and co-founder of SafeMobile. Thank you so much for coming in.
Thanks for having me.
So tell me, what does SafeMobile do?
Well, basically, it lets our kids, enjoy and explore the World Wide Web, the virtual world, if you will, while keeping them safe, because there are a lot of perils out there. There's malicious content, drugs, sex abuse, pornography, of course. Huge problem with gambling. Gambling sites and apps are a terrible problem. So we make sure that they use all the good stuff on the web without getting access to the bad stuff.
So I guess my first question, following that up is, how does it work? How does it identify these threats, properly? And second, how is it different than, another firewall or parent lock or something like that?
Right. It's interestingly enough that you raise a firewall example, because it actually works in a very similar way. The way it works is that we route all traffic from our kids, from our subscribers to our servers, which act as a sort of a firewall, right? Okay. And then we scan for keywords as well as categories. So every website, every app needs to declare itself or assign itself a category, gambling, porn, and so on. Sure. And then we block that out. We also try to understand, we hired some very smart people, and they try to understand context, because sometimes, it's not enough to have a keyword, because keywords can have double meanings or even triple meanings. Yeah,
typically the drug dealer doesn't say, hey, I deal drugs.
Exactly. Right. So a couple of years ago, we actually our algorithm identified bananas as a code word for drugs.
That's actually really amazing.
It is.
So okay, how did you come up with the idea? How was it developed?
Well, first of all, I'm a parent. I have four amazing kids. My oldest is 10. She just got her first smartphone, and it really is a huge part of their lives right now. But interestingly enough, we actually started in a completely different segment, which is religious communities. They wanted to use smartphones, and be able to use the web without compromising their way of life, obviously.
So this was kind of an answer to that.
Exactly. And then we thought about, look, if we're doing that so successfully here, what's the next, what's the next crowd, what's the next market for us, which obviously is much larger.
Incredible.
So, yeah.
Now, how customizable are the settings of, what this app blocks and what it doesn't?
So we actually took, sort of a marketing decision And we operate under one-size-fits-all model. So we have linguists and psychologists advising us on what should and should not be accessed.
Okay.
But it's a very simple app. You just download it, you install it, fire and forget, and it just works. And we actually pride ourselves in that. So it's very easy to use.
Now, so if I'm understanding this correctly,
Right.
the application itself, once installed on the device, acts as an intermediary of content.
It will route all traffic to our servers, and then we do
Right.
our magic.
So does that slow things down? Does it add
Absolutely
any kind of
not.
issue?
Absolutely not.
Absolutely not.
We take a lot of pride in that. It's super fast. Typically kids will not actually notice that they're being protected. It's that good.
Sure.
Yeah.
That's incredible.
It is.
So when and where will Safe Mobile be available?
Right. So it's available now on here in Israel. Rami Levy
Okay.
Communications are our major reseller
Okay.
for Safe Mobile, and we're just about to break out into the U.S. market. In fact.
That's incredible.
Yes.
All right. And what's next? That's the big question.
Right. So let me just, before we move forward, let's just talk a little bit for where we began. So we began in Haifa here in Israel. We were backed by High Center Ventures. It's a local incubator in Haifa. And then we were lucky enough to get the trust of two venture capital firms, River Park Ventures from New York and the Besadno Group from Jerusalem. And the next step for us is to move from seed to what we call round A, right? So it's the next huge round of finance that we are working on right now. We're just about to launch our crowdfunding campaign on a platform called Exit Valley.
Okay.
So we welcome everybody to join us, join our success on that.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Yuval Rappaport from Safe Mobile.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for coming in.
Thank you.
Now, Radiohead is coming to play in Israel next month for their 4th concert in the country, and 70s rock star Roger Waters is not happy about it. Waters, along with many other artists, sent Radiohead an open letter calling on the rock group to boycott Israel.
Radiohead singer Tom York said on Friday that he found it deeply unsettling that Waters had attacked the band publicly rather than engaging personally. Now Waters is claiming he had emailed Tom York a month before the open letter came out. Radiohead guitarist Johnny Greenwood is married to an Israeli artist, and 2 different Israeli groups have opened for Radiohead on their US and European tours this year. But Waters still doesn't want Radiohead to cross what he calls the BDS picket line. He's also calling for pressure to allow 3rd, 4th, and even 5th generation Palestinian refugees to immigrate to Israel, which could affect the state's Jewish character. The ADL has accused Waters of incorporating anti-Semitic imagery into their stage shows, including a Star of David paired with a $sign and a hammer and sickle, along with many other symbols plastered on a floating pig.
Now here's some incredible news. A Nazi artillery shell from 1938 has just been uncovered, but not in Normandy and not near Leningrad. No, this bombshell was unearthed in a garden shed in Idaho. Diana Landa was cleaning out her parents' shed in Meridian, Idaho, when she uncovered an explosive with a Nazi insignia and the year 1938 inscribed on it. She says it even still had a propellant on it. Landa's parents say they barely used the shed, and they have no idea how the explosive traveled from a German munitions factory to Idaho. One of Landa's co-workers advised her to contact bomb experts, as old explosives can spontaneously detonate, and the Mountain Home Air Force Base bomb squad has destroyed the device via detonation, after finding out that indeed the 37mm round was still live. Landa is calling her adventure a once-in-a-lifetime experience, although she didn't get to donate the shell to a museum like she'd wanted. She's glad, though, that at least she didn't turn into another U.S. casualty of World War II thanks to an accidental explosion.
The Hebrew word of the day is brought to you by IDC Summer Ulpan, open to everyone.
Now for our Hebrew word of the day, millions if not billions of Muslims across the globe are fasting this month as part of their observance of Ramadan. And in Israel, that's no different. So today's word is tzom, meaning fast. No, not fast as in quick, but as in eating. I know, since when is that a thing? But seriously speaking, latzum, or to fast, is something that many people of many faiths do, and for many reasons. Anachnu tzamim, or we fast, for Yom Kippur, Tisha B'Av, and several other days in Judaism. Muslimim tzamim, or the Muslims fast on Ramadan and several other recommended days as well. And of course, there are dozens of other religions that have a tzom at one point or another for various occasions. Of course, if you're not religious but feel left out, you can just call it a diet craze. Whatever your reason is, just remember that if you're going to fast, prepare for it by staying hydrated when possible and tzom safely. Let's go ahead and take a look at the weather forecast. Tonight, the skies should be clear to partly cloudy with a low of 67 or 19 degrees Celsius. And tomorrow you can expect a sunny blue day, but it'll be unseasonably hot with a high of 88 or 31 degrees Celsius. All right, that's it for today's news. Today's exchange rate is 3.54 shekels to the American dollar. Remember to sign up for our daily newsletter at iltv.tv. I'm Aaron Porras, and thanks for watching.